Today, we are taking an in-depth look at the quarterbacks drafted this year in the 2023 NFL Draft. Before we get into it though, if you guys could, subscribe to the channel. It is the #1 way to support me. It's totally free. You can always change your mind later. Would appreciate it so much. Either way, don't want to waste your guys' time. Let's hop right into the video. With our first player, and this is my #1 quarterback in Dynasty rookie drafts, in one quarterback. It is Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson for sure should be the #1 quarterback. I mean, this is somebody with the ceiling to be potentially the quarterback one on any given season in the NFL. He had an RAS grade of 10, which basically means he is the most athletic quarterback we've ever seen. And while he isn't the most polished quarterback we've ever seen, some of his throws were downright boneheaded at the collegiate level. His talent is simply, again, the best quarterback in football. His talent is 25 points per game, game-breaking type of rushing. A guy who can go out there and rush for 700, 800 yards. A guy who can go out there on the season and rush for 1,000 yards, sort of like Lamar Jackson did, sort of like Justin Fields did. But not only that, he has a phenomenal arm. This is somebody who can chuck the ball 70 yards down the field. He also does land himself on the Colts, which I think the Colts are actually a sneaky, really good landing spot for Anthony Richardson. I mean, for one, you have Jonathan Taylor, and well, yes, you could also look at this as a negative, because he will probably vulture touchdowns from Anthony Richardson at the goal line. I also do look at this as a positive, because it does give Anthony Richardson a really stable run game, which should allow Anthony Richardson to get outside of the pocket more and expose defenses, because the defenses have to be honest with Jonathan Taylor in the box. They can't let Jonathan Taylor see four-man fronts. So I think Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson honestly both benefit from this. I used to think when Anthony Richardson first went to the Colts, I honestly thought Jonathan Taylor would not benefit from this, but the more I think about it, I do think Jonathan Taylor does benefit actually quite a bit, because historically, we have seen running backs who land in an offense with a rushing quarterback see a huge uptick in efficiency, like J.K. Dobbins, like Miles Sanders. Your efficiency goes through the roof. These running backs can often average over 5 yards a carry, sometimes even 6 yards a carry in these type of offenses, simply because the rushing quarterback opens up so much for the running back. Not only that, we also have Michael Pittman, who is a fine wide receiver one. I mean, not the best, he's a fine guy, but not somebody you're going to be really happy about at the NFL level. But either way, a fine wide receiver one, probably rank him around 20th in the NFL, which again, for a team picking 4th overall, is pretty good for Anthony Richardson. Not only that, you have Alec Pierce, a fine wide receiver 2 in my opinion, and they go out and draft Josh Downs, a fine wide receiver 3 in my opinion. While their O-line is not perfect, I think it's fine enough for Anthony Richardson. And at this point, I think fine is more than good enough for Anthony Richardson. Again, with all the weapons he has, you also have Shane Steichen, somebody who knows how to get the most out of these mobile quarterbacks. I mean, he's coming from an Eagles offense that just led Jalen Hurts to a borderline MVP season. Jalen Hurts could have easily won MVP had he played the full season out. So Shane Steichen knows how to use these quarterbacks, and that's another reason why I really like Anthony Richardson. I mean, right here, he's basically stepping into the best situation in terms of all of these rookie landing spots, and not only that, he gets top 5 draft capital. When you're getting this type of draft capital, I'd say top 10 and above, but realistically top maybe 6 or so and above. If you're getting that type of draft capital, you are nearly guaranteed to be a starter at the end of year 1 and start at the NFL for at least 2 seasons, unless you are Zach Wilson level bad, unless you are Josh Rosen level bad, in which case you bust, it happens. But either way, I'm willing to take a risk on a guy like Anthony Richardson, because his ceiling is higher than guys like Josh Rosen, than guys like Zach Wilson, where if he flops, he does still have a good rushing floor. And at the end of the day, who cares if he's a good NFL quarterback? If you can rush for 1,000 yards and you are a terrible NFL quarterback, you rushed for 1,000 yards. You still probably had at least 10 passing touchdowns. And I think that is fine for fantasy. Especially in 2 quarterback leagues, I am much more willing to take a shot on him because his ceiling is so game-breaking. I mean, if you have him and a guy like Justin Fields, there are times where them two combined could drop 80 fantasy points. If that's the case, you win your week. And yes, they will put up some weak losing performances as well, but I do think the rushing performance does at least give them a more stable floor than solely pocket passing quarterbacks, where if you rush for 40 yards on a game, and you don't really do much in the passing game. That's still 4 extra points, which is absolutely fine at the position. That's why I do have Anthony Richardson as my number 1 quarterback, and me personally, I don't think it's close. I would have Anthony Richardson in a tier of his own. Let me know what you think about that down below, because I know that probably is a controversial take, especially because Bryce Young and CJ Stroud both do have better floors than Anthony Richardson. But either way, let me know down below what you guys think, and let me know down below who you would take as your quarterback 1. Before we get into our next guy, though, I would just like to say, if you guys could, go down, give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. If you guys have any questions related to the draft, related to Dynasty, related to trades, anything, please let me know down below, and subscribe to the channel. Again, it is the number 1 way to support me. It's totally free. I appreciate it, and you could always change your mind later. With that, though, guys, let's hop right into it with our second player, and that is Bryce Young. Bryce Young does deserve to be my quarterback too. I mean, he does find himself in a tiny bit of a better situation than Stroud, but I think this is more of a talent play, more of a floor play than it is anything else, because Bryce Young has the highest floor out of any of these guys. He probably has the highest rate to hit. Literally, the only concern with Bryce Young is size. If he were 6'2", if he were 6'3", he would be the number 1 pick, no questions asked. And I know he was already the number 1 pick, no questions asked. But he could honestly almost be touted as a Trevor Lawrence type of talent if he hit that growth spurt and was 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". But instead, he is a little bit tinier at the position, which I think does concern some fantasy football players. Me, I'm not really too concerned about it from a passing standpoint. I think he's going to have more balls batted down at the line of scrimmage thing. He can't see over the line is stupid. He's been playing quarterback his whole life. He's been playing at Alabama with guys in front of him who are 6'5" and above. Like guys like Evan Neal. Like Evan Neal's 6'7". He's totally fine. Maybe he has a couple more balls batted down at the line of scrimmage, but it's not anything crazy. He can see over the line. It's fine. Not that big of a deal in my opinion. I think the main concern with it is from an injury perspective, whereas Bryce Young will probably be at a higher risk for injuries because his body is smaller. He's going to be less durable and less able to take those hits than a guy like Anthony Richardson, who is 6'3", like 225. That is my main concern with Bryce Young, but other than that, this is somebody who is a phenomenal passer inside the pocket. Honestly, one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen coming out of college, just from a pure know-how standpoint. I mean, this is somebody who knows exactly where to put the ball, makes the right read 99 times out of 100. Probably the smartest actually, that's probably a better way to put it. Probably the smartest quarterback I've seen coming out of college. If not, he's up there, and he didn't really have much to work with in this Alabama offense this last season. Aside from Jahmyr Gibbs, these wide receivers are not NFL caliber, not up to the standards that Bryce Young has had in years past when he had Devonta Smith. And at times, he looked like he put the team on his back and absolutely carried them to victory. I mean, we saw in the Tennessee game, they did lose. Bryce Young was the only reason they were in that game. Bryce Young was phenomenal in that game. I think Bryce Young, a great pick, a great floor. Well, he doesn't necessarily have the ceiling and the rushing upside of a guy like Anthony Richardson. I think if you need a safe quarterback, let's say you're in a position where you already have 2 phenomenal quarterbacks, right? You already have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and then you have Jared Goff as your quarterback too. I think it's fine taking Bryce Young at 1 potentially if you want the floor case, because you need a third quarterback for stability. But other than that, I think Bryce Young should be the QB2, and it stinks to say that because in real life, he's easily my QB1 in this class. Bryce Young is a guy I'm rooting for at the NFL level and somebody who I think will be a great NFL quarterback. But at the same time, I think Anthony Richardson, the ceiling is simply higher. That's why I do have Anthony Richardson at 1. Bryce Young, though, a great quarterback, somebody I love. Moving on, though, to my next player, and that is CJ Stroud. And I think that's no surprise to anyone. Going number 2 overall to the Texans. I think the Texans team is a little bit of a weird landing spot. I mean, their O-line, it's okay. It's honestly on the lesser side. They do have Laramie Tunsil, who is a great offensive lineman in his own right. I think CJ Stroud finds himself in a pretty poor situation. I mean, for one, you have a defensive head coach in D'Amico Ryans, which is fine for the Texans. But I think at the same time, it is a little bit harder for CJ Stroud to develop with a defensive head coach. Although it is nice to see they do hire Bobby Slowick from the 49ers as their OC, which is a pretty good sign because the 49ers know how to put together a great offense. I mean, year in and year out, they have quarterbacks who are no names, guys like Nick Mullins, and they make them into great quarterbacks. So I'm absolutely fine with CJ Stroud's OC, but I think in the long term, it could be a little bit concerning because being a head coach is a lot more permanent of a position than OC. I mean, 16 of the 32 offensive coordinators in the NFL switched roles this last season. So, I mean, that's crazy to me. But also, CJ Stroud is stepping into a situation where he doesn't really have much of wide receiver. I mean, his best wide receiver right now is probably John Mechie. And John Mechie, a great story. I am rooting for him. Somebody who's shooting on my boards and somebody I've been drafting just about everywhere over on Underdog Fantasy. But the thing is, John Mechie is coming back from leukemia. There are a ton of question marks with him. They also go out, they draft Nathaniel Dell, who I actually am falling more and more in love with by the week. He is somebody who's going super late in these Dynasty rookie drafts, and I just don't understand why. Please let me know down below. I mean, this is somebody who is almost a second round pick, and somebody who could easily be the wide receiver one in this offense, an offense that consists of Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and of course John Mechie as well. But Nathaniel Dell stepping into a situation where he could get volume right away. Anyways, that was a tangent. Either way, CJ Stroud stepping into a situation where he doesn't really have all that much to work with. He does have Dameon Pierce in the run game, which is fine. I think Dameon Pierce is a pretty good running back and somebody who they didn't really bring in a lot of competition alongside. They do have Devin Singletary, but that's really about it. I don't like the situation as much for CJ Stroud. I think he does provide you a pretty high floor as well. Somebody I really did like at the collegiate level, but now his wide receiving core this upcoming season is probably worse than the wide receiving core he's had the last 2 seasons in college. I mean, not probably, almost definitely worse. Maybe not so much last year, but 2 years ago going with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, now going to John Mechie. It is worse for him. I think it will be an adjustment period for him. Overall though, still do like CJ Stroud, and these are my top 3 quarterbacks by far. I will talk pretty quickly about Will Levis and Hendon Hooker because I think they are worth a discussion. Will Levis, somebody who fell down draft boards a ton, and oftentimes when you get second round draft capital, the NFL is often right more times than they are wrong. Yes, you can point to times where they were wrong. Guys like Drew Brees, guys like Aaron Rodgers who fell to the late first, early second round, and then were phenomenal NFL players. But more often than not, these guys turn out to be busts at the NFL level, and for every Drew Brees, I can point you to 100 Drew Locks that just did not work out at the NFL level. And so I am pretty concerned with Will Levis, not somebody I'm going to be drafting too heavily now, unfortunately, because I honestly thought he was going to be getting top 5 draft capital, and I was drafting him a pretty fair amount under that assumption. That's not what happened though. It's all good. Either way though, that's enough about Will Levis. Let's talk about Hendon Hooker for a second here. And Hendon Hooker is somebody who I think in the long term probably will never start at the NFL level, but I would probably give it like a 25% chance that he does end up getting a start somewhere, even if it's not with the Lions. And I think the Lions were pretty justified in taking a shot on Hendon Hooker, considering he is somewhat polished coming out of college, which I'm more than fine with taking an old quarterback coming out of college. I actually don't really understand fully the knocks of taking an old quarterback. I mean, look at somebody like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow comes into the league and is very polished right away. And you have a very polished quarterback under a rookie contract, which provides you an ample opportunity to go out and win a Super Bowl. Either way, that's my thing on older quarterbacks. But either way, I think Hendon Hooker, a fine player to go out and get for the Lions, a team that, yes, they probably could have addressed more needs on defense, but they did go out and draft Brian Branch, Jack Campbell. So I think it's fine. I think Hendon Hooker, though, could get a chance to start maybe in a few years to come. I wouldn't take him unless you're getting him in the 3rd round, even in 2 quarterback leagues. But in 2 quarterback leagues, I think he is smart to go out and get in the 3rd round, simply because he may have opportunity in the future. And these rushing quarterbacks, no matter what, no matter if they're good in the NFL or not, they will have rushing opportunity, and that provides them with a high floor. Look at Jalen Hurts, a guy who did go in the 2nd round and ended up being a pretty good quarterback for fantasy, despite not really knowing if he was going to be a great quarterback in real life. Either way though, guys, that's going to be it for me. That is my summation of the top 5 NFL quarterbacks. Let me know what you think down below. Very interested to hear about it. Subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. It is the #1 way to support me. It's totally free. You can always change your mind later. With that though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.